All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. We're gonna begin to dial it in. So just so you know, if you hadn't heard me say this the first time, there is plenty of snacks over there. There is plenty of coffee over there. There is plenty of fruit over there, so please help yourself throughout the evening, as this is meant to be a fairly informal night. And so please get up as you need to get more snacks and drinks throughout the time. Please, if you need to go use the bathroom, you'll hang a left. There's some restrooms that way, or directly down the hallway as well. It is so good to see you guys. This is like the fullest developed seminar we've ever had, and this is super exciting. So thank you so much for being present tonight. Thank you so much for being willing to invest a couple hours of your life into your leadership and into community together. We have a very fun, I think I would say, topic that we are dialoguing and discussing tonight. And I say discussing because if you are new to a developed seminar, you haven't been to one before, one of the things that we definitely want to prioritize is discussion. That's why we have you around circular tables rather than rows. Over the course of our content, we're going to break for what we call table talks. And table talks is an opportunity for a question to get flashed up on the screen, and you are going to have 3 or so minutes each time to share with your table, and where the invitation is for everyone to share and to dialogue together, wanting this to be a safe and courageous space to kind of just dialogue with. Here's what's going on, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm struggling with, here's what gets me excited, whatever it may be. I have the honor and privilege of having Tiffany Lentz join me tonight as we talk about this, again, fun, odd, weird, maybe eyebrow-raising topic of how to lead when you're not in charge. And this seminar is actually being taken directly from this book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. How this is going to go, there's a lot of content that is directly quoted from the book. As you see on the screens, there'll be tons of quotes in tons of things in quotation marks. I like to be able to cite my sources and give credit to where credit is due, but I'm telling you up front, I did not feel like putting Clay Scroggins as the author about 70 times in the PowerPoint. So whenever you see quotations, it is by Clay, who wrote this book. And then Tiffany Lentz as a managing vice president of an executive leadership coaching firm. She is going to be providing some of her own content as well to kind of compound off of the book. So we are delighted that you are here, and I would just love to pray as we enter into our learning time together. Jesus, we thank you that you are a leader that we can faithfully follow, learn from, that we can set our eyes on you, who is the author and perfecter of our faith. And we know that as leaders that are broken, can be immature, that can be prideful, can be insecure, that we can lean and rely on you. So in this space, in this time, may we take all that we are and all that we have and commit it to all that you are. We invite you into this space as we learn on how to lead when we're not in charge. And we know that our posture ultimately is to say that you are always in charge. And may our hearts reflect that as we think, as we act, as we live as leaders. We invite you into this space. Use it as you see fit. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, like I said, we're basing off of this book, and so please, if you want to, we're probably going to give you about half of the book's content by the end of tonight, so if you want to go catch the other half, please go onto Amazon and help out Clay in purchasing his book. For those of you who love roadmaps, for those of you who love to know where we are going and like the plan, you like to know where we're going, you don't like the surprise, you want to know from the jump what we're doing, here you are. Here, this is for you. We are going to be covering a vast variety of topics, and each are going to be spelled out, laid out within your packet of notes, where there's plenty of fill in the blanks. So this will walk through it. We're going to talk about the lies of leadership. We're going to have a blitz on identity. We're going to talk about these two weird words, kibosh versus kabosh. Lead yourself, think critically, courageous followership, challenging up, all these things within how to lead when you're not in charge. So that's the roadmap. This is where we're going to start our time as a primer, and then we're going to enter into your first discussion time, actually, is this quote: "People lead all the time with little to no authority. Some of the most effective leaders, the people who have changed the world, led without formal authority." And I think that we could say that is true when we think across our history, or think about maybe someone within your organization that has a ton of leadership, but maybe not so much in the formalized sense. So here's what I'd love for you to do, is around your table, discuss this one question for a couple of minutes. Who is someone you admire for their leadership who didn't or doesn't necessarily have a title? Who is someone you admire that doesn't necessarily have a title, though they act and think and live like a leader? Take a couple minutes to discuss that. Go. All right. Thank you for participating in that first of many dialogues that you're going to have around your table this evening. And we're going to hit the first point of where we're going with the lies of leadership. This is going to, the lies of leadership and the blitz on identity, it's going to be a little bit of some foundational stuff that we feel like it is utterly important to cover. And as we head to the other 6 topics and concepts within this. So a little bit of a primer as we go into our time together. The lies of leadership. What would those be? I have 4 for you tonight. And in your packet, you'll see that there is some fill in the blanks as we go along. So lie number 1 is this: positional authority is a prerequisite for effective leadership. Positional authority is a prerequisite for effective leadership. What does that mean? That in order for me to have a leadership that is noticeable, that is tangible, that people recognize of, I need to have a position of authority in order for me to have any type of credit or clout or recognition, etc. And we would say that that is not actually true. From the book, Clay says this: when we're given the authority to lead, a title, a uniform, a corner office, then and only then will we have the opportunity to lead. That's just not true. But how often do we strive towards this positional authority, thinking that once I have that title, then once I have that position, then I will be respected. Then I will be seen as leader. That is simply not true. How about number 2? When you're not in charge or don't have the title, there is no leadership for you. So let's take it one step further. It's not just that the idea of prerequisite for leadership is not having this positional authority, but it's this, let's flip the coin of like, if I don't have a title at all, then there's no leadership for me. And I don't know about you, but I have felt that. That like in growing in my leadership and trying to understand what's the right paradigm, what's the correct way to understand leadership, it's not that if I'm not in charge, okay, great, just toss in the towel. I don't have any leadership at all. Let me just go ahead and be a what's that thing called, a rug? That I'm just gonna lay over and play dead. I'm just gonna let people tell me what to do. That's not leadership. Here's another thought. When someone is telling you what to do, you don't have to lead anything. You don't even have to think. You just learn to put your mind in neutral and go with the flow. When someone else is leading you, it seems as though there is nothing left to be done, so you just wait. Have you ever felt that before? There's a lie in there that we need to acknowledge. There's a lie in there that we need to correct. And maybe it's coming from your own brain, or maybe it's coming from a leader to the side of you, above you, or messaging that you received when you were a kid. But there's a lie in here that we need to address. How about number 3? When I don't have a title, I don't have influence. When I don't have a title, I don't have influence. Friends, that is simply not the case. Now, I'm talking to a room of leaders. I said that we're kind of laying a foundation here first. This is probably not a new thought for you. For many of you, it's probably not a new thought. But we need to understand, as we ourselves are growing in our leadership, that titles do not mean influence. Titles do not mean influence. And sometimes we claw for leadership thinking that's where my influence is coming from. And some of us also think that if I don't have a title, great, I don't have any influence at all. Clay says this: the lie we believe is that we must wait until we're leaders in the leader seat before we can have influence. But the good news is that influence can be cultivated wherever you are. But if you fail to cultivate influence when you're not in charge, you will have no influence to leverage when you are. Influence always outpaces authority. Let me say that again. Influence always outpaces authority. You should underline that, highlight that, whatever that is. And leaders who consistently leverage their authority to lead are far less effective in the long term than leaders who leverage their influence. That quote alone is enough just to sit on that and think about it and then go home, because there's so much richness in here to understand, to not just understand cognitively, but to understand on a heart, passionate level of what does it mean to lead out of your influence rather than your title. Influence has been and always will be the currency of leadership. I love that phrase, the currency of leadership. How about the 4th one, the last one? In order for people to listen to me, I need to tell them that I am in charge. How often has that worked? In order for people to listen to me, I need to let them know that I'm the one that calls the shots. Have you ever followed a leader that has done this before? How did it make you feel? Do you think you've ever done this before? How do you think it made them feel? Did it make them want to follow you? When people have to tell you that they're in charge in order to follow you, you know instinctively that something has gone desperately wrong. And I think Clay is absolutely right. Again, we want to relinquish the understanding of titles are the way to leadership. Are titles helpful in leadership? Yes. Are titles, can they open doors for you at times? Absolutely. Does it look nice to have a fancy title at the tagline in an email? Yeah, it makes you feel cool. But if we are striving for leadership through our titles, and we are doing it wrong, folks. So we need to shift our thinking of what does it look like to lead out of our influence. So let's have another discussion. Title or not, what are reasons why you struggle with leading, interpersonally and intrapersonally? Interpersonally meaning with people around you, intrapersonally meaning inside of you. Whether you have a title or not, what are reasons why you struggle with leading with other people, or why are reasons that you struggle with your leadership within your own self? Not deep at all. Go.
Okay, my name is Tiffany. It's nice to meet you all. For those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. So we're going to talk about a blitz on identity. So I didn't participate with my table in this one, not because I don't have any weaknesses to talk about, because I felt that I owed you a public confessional. So my particular weakness is imposter syndrome. Is this a familiar term to anybody? Raise hands if you've heard of this. All over the room. Great. So fun fact, I am an executive coach for a company called Pariveda Solutions. I'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute. But what's interesting is that it turns out that executive coaches also need coaches. just like therapists need therapists and pastors need pastors and pastors need therapists. You don't have to say it. You have to say it out loud. I should keep moving before they don't invite me back. So I was speaking to my executive coach a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned imposter syndrome. I've probably been leading since, stuffed animals to thousands of people later, and still feel imposter syndrome. And so I mentioned this to her, a lovely older Austrian woman, and she said, "Oh, Tiffany," I can't do her accent. She said, "Oh, Tiffany, that's not the term anymore. The industry has decided that the term is imposter phenomenon." Why is that? Because words matter. And so if we can change a term, if we acknowledge that something like syndrome means there's something inherently wrong with me, I can't fix this, I can just carry it around, for the industry to say, actually, we're going to rename this because it's actually just something I experience. I don't have to carry it around with me. That was really freeing to me. I've been an executive for 20 years. That was really freeing to me to say, oh, wow, this is something I can now shift my perspective on and deal differently with. So let's take a look at we're going to talk about 5 different elements of identity. We could, again, talk about identity all night long, but I just want to draw your attention to a few different concepts here. Your identity is defined as this: characteristics determining who or what a person or thing is. Your sense of identity then directs you in every situation. So whatever you identified at your table, let's channel this a little bit. Mine was imposter phenomenon. If I don't deal with that and readjust my identity, I get to carry that around with me, which means that I think I'm an imposter, I think I'm a fake, I think I'm inadequate, I think I don't have the right skills no matter what title I have or what speaking engagement I'm asked to do, and it directs me in every situation. I carry that baggage around with me. Here's a great quote. Leaders who wrap themselves in the security blanket of "if I were in charge" or "when I'm in charge" as an excuse for poor performance and lack of initiative will most likely never be in charge. So Tony hit on this already. This sounds a little bit more like victim thinking, right? Let's say you had a terrible experience before. That's usually where victim thinking comes from. You've got a terrible experience, and so it's coming from some validity, a valid experience, but we can't carry that stuff around with us. If we're going to lead anyone, including ourselves, we have to get healthy. Number 2, how you see yourself affects your ability to follow others, lead others, and reach your highest potential. I love that expression, highest potential. It's one that comes from my firm. And at this firm, we have a mission. The mission statement is that we grow each individual to their highest potential for the good of the client, the community, and the world. The company I work for is not just an executive coaching firm, it's actually a technology strategy company. What a strange mission. Wouldn't you expect the mission to be like build great software, solve all tech problems ever, make the world better with tech, something super trite and inspirational like that? No, actually, it is to grow each individual to their highest potential, because the belief, this post-conventional belief, is that if you invest in one person and help them be a whole healthy person, perpetually growing, you get generative value to the nth degree. So that's the positive, right? If I am carrying around my belief that I am an imposter, that I am inadequate, I am not able to follow people well. I'm not able to lead people very effectively. I'm certainly not going to reach my highest potential. But if I'm able to get healthy, then I actually can be a better follower. I can be an engaged follower. I can be a much better leader of people who are just around me, regardless of that sphere, and I can reach my calling. Joshua Becker is a blogger. His blog is called Becoming Minimalist. This is so great. Because while voices entering our mind is inevitable, which voices are allowed into the heart is a decision left to us, and it is a decision of utmost importance. We've heard the verse from Proverbs that says, keep your heart with all diligence. It doesn't just mean protecting it from bad relationships, girls. That's what they always told me when I was growing up. Keep your heart so you don't fall in love with the wrong person. No, it's so much bigger than that. This is about protecting the wisdom, that space where the Holy Spirit influences from. So we are protecting what we allow in there, because what we allow in is going to influence every action, including the way we follow, the way we lead, and whether or not we can reach our highest calling. Number 3, if your identity is unstable, dun, 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 you'll pick an identity that pleases others at the moment. Bleh. Okay, let's be honest about this. We know these people. We've probably been these people. No raise of hands, please. But it is really frustrating when you have someone in your life, in your work, in your school, and on TV, in your home, who is wildly inconsistent. And what does it do? It makes you not trust them at all. You surely can't respect them. This isn't about agreement here. This is about consistency. But we have to talk a little bit about the difference between identity and character. So what is identity? Identity actually it's the external space. The Chronicle of Higher Education defines it as this. It's the relatively polished persona, depending on where you're from in the US, maybe it's persona for you. The persona presented to the world. But your character, it's the internal piece. It's the idiosyncratic energy, the morals, the ethics. But here's the problem. They often break through the facade. You cannot be two people. That's where the instability comes from. Whether your sphere of influence is your family or your school or this entire church or your corporation, you cannot be two people all the time. You will never reach your fullest potential. You will not be a good follower or a good leader. We have to aim for consistency of character. That alignment of character will strengthen identity, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go. Number 4, hiding or pretending to be someone you are not disempowers our self-agency. I love that expression. I learned that expression from this book, self-agency. What is it? Willpower plus way power, which is maybe another new term, equals self-agency. Let's break it down so it makes a bit more sense. So we know what willpower is. Willpower is the control that's exerted to do something. What is way power? Way power, this is the ability to pivot. It's the ability to be flexible, fungible, the ability to create, to creatively maneuver and find the right place for our best and unique skills. So if what I believe about myself, what I'm willing to carry around or what I'm willing to lay down about my unique purpose does impact how I'm able to apply it. Therefore, number 5, constantly work to strike an authentic, ever-growing balance. If you think of yourself too lowly, you won't believe you're worthy to lead, and if you think of yourself too highly, you'll overestimate your abilities. See, the source of our identity, this is all about a misaligned identity. The source of our identity has got to come from the source of truth. Otherwise, we are constantly unstable. We're defined by everybody else around us. If the source of my identity does not come from who God says I am, then I can't align the rest of these points. It actually has to come from exactly what He says about me and nothing else. Specifically, not my feelings. So whether or not I feel inadequate, if I feel like an imposter, if you feel fearful, if you feel weak in this moment, or you feel like a victim, feelings are valid. They are also lies. And they're only true if they also align with the source of truth, okay? So it is our job as people who, regardless of our sphere, we have to keep our feelings in check with truth so our identity stays aligned with truth. That's where the power of influence comes from. This is an active sport, you all. This is constant activity. There isn't a destination here. It's an ongoing activity. The more clear you are about your identity, the more consistent you'll be with others, the less concerned you'll be about others, the more confident you'll be, the less confused you will be about your emotions. So, often our identity, we get off course, right? And we have to keep reconnecting. Go back. And here you have the 4 in summary. Good? Fabulous. I also can't see you all very well back there, so just yell loud. It's okay. Okay, so often our identity gets off track before we even realize what's happening. And so maybe this is something you feel like sharing, maybe it's not something you feel like sharing. It's just the beginning of a conversation. Take a few minutes and do a little bit of reflecting on some of these highs and lows. What are some of those moments in time that influenced how you see your identity?
Thank you, Tiffany, for leading us in this blitz on identity. Also, side note, I'm the editor of your packet, and I made a mistake. It says a blitz on leadership. My bad. If you didn't already exit out, it's supposed to say a blitz on identity for Tiffany's section there. And also, I want to draw our eyes back to number 3, that she said, if your identity is unstable, you'll pick an identity that pleases others in the moment. And she used a bunch of C's later on in point number 5. So let me add a couple more C's for you, because there is, when I think about identity being unstable and I am just trying to please other people, what am I doing so often? This is me. I don't know about you, but this is me. I copy and I compete and I compare. I copy and I compete and I compare. When I'm insecure in my leadership, when I'm insecure in my identity, what do? I don't know about you, but what I do is I copy and I compete and I compare. And those are things that we must fight against within our own flesh. Well, let's move on to these 2 words that are like, what in the world are these? The words are kibosh and kabesh. Kibosh and kabesh. And so these 2 words, you may have heard the word, someone put a kibosh on that conversation. Maybe you've heard that before. But the word kabesh, it may be a new word for you. Let's kind of unpack these 2 together. Lean in with me, because it has the chance to be just a little confusing. I'm hoping that I can articulate it well for us together. But as we dive into these 2 words, we need to have a conversation about this word called ambition. Ambition is strong desire to make something or achieve something, even if it takes great effort, focus, and determination. I think that we could all say as leaders that ambition is needed from a leader. If you see a leader that is ambitionless, they're not really getting very far. So ambition is absolutely needed. But here's the thing, swinging to 2 sides of a pendulum that we're going to talk about tonight is, number 1, on one side of the pendulum is that ambition does not magically happen when you are placed in charge. So you get the title, you get the authority, you get the positional leadership. Ambition doesn't just like sprinkle fairy dust on you and then boom, I have ambition. We know that's not really the case. So we know that it doesn't just magically happen when you're placed in charge. On the other side of the continuum, you will never find that magical place when you can lead without constraints, meaning ambition run wild. So you can't just be, I'm gonna, all my ambition is just gonna come naturally together with no effort whatsoever. And you can't just say, I have ambition running wild over here with no constraints. There's this in your packet, there is this continuum of ambition that is distorted. And like I said, if we go to one side of the continuum, we could think, and sometimes even as Jesus followers, we could have this thought of, I need to make sure that I die to the flesh. I say no to any selfish ambition. We use that word. But is there a potential that we swing the pendulum too far? That, I'm not going to have original thoughts of my own. Or I'm not going to have this ability to muster myself up in the strength that I know God has given me and the gifts that God's given me. No, I'm going to kill ambition and live that way. Or we go towards ambition run wild of I am just living with no accountability and no restraints and so on and so forth. We need to understand what ambition is, where it comes from, and why God has put it in your life, and how to harness it for the purpose He has given to you. We need to understand this. In order to do this, we need to go actually all the way to the book of Genesis for a quick moment. Genesis chapter 1. God is speaking, and he says this to Adam and Eve. He says, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it." In the Hebrew, this word subdue is this word kabesh. Kabesh means to subdue, to cultivate, to organize something in such a way that it thrives, grows, and flourishes. This word kabesh that we are starting to look at right now has this deep meaning of not just subduing, but I am cultivating, I am expanding, I am organizing, I am putting things into sensical order in a way that it thrives and grows and flourishes. And now there's this other word, kabosh. That maybe you've heard before. The definition for kabosh is to put an end to something or to dispose of it decisively. There isn't proof in the Hebrew text that these two words are come from the same family, so I think we can just call them like distant cousins, because they're pretty close together in nature and their meanings and their roots, but we're not able to tie them directly together. But kabosh and kabesh is what we're looking at today. So now let's add into the continuum here of ambition distorted. We have kill ambition. Over here we are waiting to kabosh, and over here we are yearning to kabosh. You're like, Tony, you're starting to lose me. Let me see if I can help. Here we go. Next line in your notes. Waiting to kabosh means this: you are passively passing the leadership buck and just doing what's told of me, not having an original thought of your own, thought or ideas of your own, being a doormat. Remember when I said rug earlier? That's what I was trying to say. Being a doormat, subduing your leadership so it doesn't become sinful or you don't overstep. Does anyone resonate with that at all? Or have you ever resonated with that at all? That I am just passively letting leadership kind of go by me. I'm not recognizing maybe the talents, the giftings that God has given me, or that I inherently have, or that people have been calling out in you. Or, again, you're thinking of that I don't have a title, therefore I'm just going to keep waiting and kiboshing my own leadership until I get the title, because that's when I'm going to lead. I'm going to put a pause on my leadership until I get the title. Well, how about yearning? How about yearning to kabosh? This is the desire to lead without constraints and without discipline. The motivation to lead without being led and kiboshing other leaders' influence. Living without accountability or just doing you. This idea that you would say, you know what, this is who I am. I'm going to lead no matter what anyone says. I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to take charge. I'm going to control the floor. I'm going to make sure my idea wins out. I'm going to make sure that fill in the blank. And you're not living with accountability. And there's this yearning for your leadership to kibosh others, put an end to other people's leadership so that you can take charge. There's a lot of pride in there, right? How often have you felt this way? Maybe not as like poignantly or explicitly as this, but maybe glimmers of jealousy of other leaders, wishing that you could be in their position, wishing you had their title. Can't wait for you to be the leader so that you can make the better decisions. Yearning to kibosh. When your kibosh is passive, it leaves you waiting on authority, abdicating your responsibility. I love that word. I don't know why. Abdicating your responsibility as someone created in God's image. When your kibosh is active, it manifests as selfish ambition, where you are working for self-advancement and the ability to control others for your own purposes. These do not sound healthy, do they, friends? But if we're being honest, how often do we go towards one side or the other? And I think what Clay says here is very fascinating as he kind of gets to the root of the issue. The lie of each extreme of kibosh is that God and other leaders around me can't be trusted, so I need to passively wait, or I need to take matters into my own hands. Just reading that gives me goosebumps because I know that can be me. Especially the taking matters into my own hands, because I think I'm the smartest leader. And my ego and my pride get to me. How about yours? That you have an inflated view of your leadership. Or maybe you have a deflated view of your leadership and what the power it actually can be when it is, as Tiffany talked about, it aligned with truth in the image of God. So let's go back to Kabesh. Kabesh, to subdue, to cultivate, to organize in a way that thrives, grows, and flourishes. I love this definition. So if we add in the last piece of our graph now, we have this sweet spot, the Kabesh zone. So we're not waiting passively to kibosh. We're not rampantly running in our own pride and arrogance in kibosh. We are waiting, or we are living in the Kabesh zone, this middle space that honestly can be very difficult, very awkward, very trying at times. But this Kabesh zone that we want to share tonight is where we would say, that Clay would say, that we would say is where we ought to live as leaders, whether you have a title or whether you don't. So let's talk about some marks of a Kabesh leader. Number one, a Kabesh leader cultivates influence through relationships. A Kabesh leader cultivates influence through relationships. They don't cultivate their influence through how much they've gotten done. They don't cultivate their influence by their title. They don't cultivate their influence by how many followers they have on social media, how many degrees they have behind their name. It is the relationships that they have and how they are valuing those, pouring into those. That's what a Kabesh leader does. Number two is that they know the way to the front isn't by pushing ahead or waiting until the game is over. They have this mentality. Again, I told you, it's like an awkward middle. The Kabesh zone is this weird tension of not over here and it's not over here. And so often within our own flesh, within our own pride, within our own passivity, within our own insecurity, we will either push to the front or we'll just passively wait till the game is over. But a Kabesh leader knows how to live in that tension. And tension's a good thing. Many times we don't like it. But tension can be a really good thing. 3 is a Kabesh leader gives space for people to thrive and cultivates growth in others through time, attention, care, and kind correction. I love all of those words. We could break all those out into individualized points, but we won't for the sake of our time. But a leader, a Kabesh leader, is someone who says, hey, I want to cultivate not just my own growth in this Kabesh zone, but I want to bring other people in to it. I want to pull people out of the passively waiting and the insecure and kind of downplaying their leadership. And again, doing this tactfully, but I want to also keep people accountable and maybe call people out if I have the relationship with them. And I want to bring them into a cultivation of growth within their influence as I see it in them, and as I'm trying to do it as well through time, attention, care, and kind correction. Number 4, courageously lives through their giftings. Courageously living through your giftings. Honesty moment is that one of my struggles is I'm an optimist. I'm an extrovert. I have a relatively confident personality. Put those three together, optimist, extrovert, relatively confident, and sometimes, if I'm being honest, I fear that people think of me and look at me of like, wow, he's just being a prideful son of a gun. And are there times that I am? Absolutely. But are there times that I think and I'm processing and I'm conversing with my closest people and I am asking, okay, God, I want to courageously live in my giftings, but can that look like pride at times? And it actually is not. Yes. Friends, there is a very, very fine line between confidence and cockiness. But we must be willing to live courageously and confidently within our giftings. Do we need to be humble and receive correction? Yes, and we will talk about that in a few. But we must be willing to courageously live through our giftings that we have. Organizes and creates betterments of others, not just for themselves. A Kabesh leader is someone who, again, is not just trying to thrive for themselves, but no, they are thinking others first. That is their thoughts. That's their goal. That is the lane in which they're thinking. I'm not just here to better me. I'm here to better my team, my organization, the kingdom of God. This is why I am here. Uses their energy to help others get ahead, not get ahead of others. It's just another way to say what we've kind of been already saying, is that a Kabesh leader is choosing to take their energies and not get ahead so that you're on top, but to help others and invest in them. Lastly, is they pours out and gets filled back up by God. Unapologetically standing on the word of God, the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we know that our strength comes from God and God alone. And as we pour out our leadership, we must go back over and over and over again to the source of truth, the source of our strength. And how are we choosing to do that as we go? I hope that this made sense. Kabesh, ambition, running wild, passive. Let's talk about it amongst your tables for a few minutes. So let's answer a couple of these questions. Would you say that your default is to be more waiting or yearning, kind of subduing your own leadership, or running your leadership running wild? Would you say that your default is to be more waiting or yearning? And what is a step you can take to be more in the Kabesh zone? Take a few minutes. Let's discuss that together. All right, begin to bring it back in. Begin to bring it back in.
Okay, let's get started. We're going to have a little less rowdy back there at Scott's table. Thank you very much. Just kidding. All right, this is my favorite, my personal favorite so far, and it's both been impactful to me as well as I hope it'll be impactful to you and pivotal for our conversation. Kudos to Tony for being so very direct and raw. Some of this content is just hard, and we have to take an honest look at ourselves if we're going to be better and more effective leaders. Leading yourself is a really powerful position to be in. It's also a very hard and honest thing to talk about. It's defined as creating the culture of your life. This is just about you, okay? For right now, we're going to talk about not the realms of influence per se that we all have. We're going to talk about me, just me, the only person I can actually control, just me. I highly recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Anybody read this? It's a great one. See a couple people, smart people here. Love this. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your goal is your desired outcome. Your system, however, is the collection of daily habits that will get you there. To begin, spend less time focusing on outcomes, more time focusing on the habits that precede the results. So, let's focus on the things that create the culture that I want in my life. It's out of this internal culture then that we develop our realms of influence. And these realms of influence, let's be clear about this, realms of influence are not a steady state. They are forever shifting and changing. The only constant is change. It doesn't matter what position you're in life, you have multiple realms of influence. It could just work as the easiest one, right? But you also have them at home. If you're a parent who's now influencing adult children, you have a shifted realm. If you're a grandparent influencing adult children and also now older grandchildren, you have a shifted realm. Moving from corporate to being an entrepreneur, shifted realm. Pastor to church, student to college to work, shifted realm. This is a forever movement, okay? So figuring out how to own the ever-shifting culture that I want to create in my life is forever empowering. But our goal here is actually to become someone people want to follow. And we're going to talk about what that means in several different ways. How is that manifested? But really, we want to be somebody that we would want to follow. That's not hard to look at in the mirror, or that's not easy to look at in the mirror all the time, but it is something we have to look at. How is this done? This is done by accepting the invitation to be God's business partner. Someone taught me this years ago, and it was a 180-degree shift in my entire life, mentally, physically, emotionally, from a professional standpoint. And here's why. We know this verse. We've read it 100 times. If you grew up in church like I did, if you didn't, you've read it many, many times. John 17, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask what you wish and it'll be done for you. And we've heard it mispreached many times. We've heard it preached well many times. Bill Johnson is the pastor of Bethel Church out in Redding. I heard him preach on this recently. I had to listen to it 3 times to get a hold of what he was saying. Let's break these words down, because this is not an ethereal theological comment. It's a literal request. It's a request for the architect of the universe to want to co-labor with us. So if we're at home, at work, at school, at church, he wants to do life. And that's as real as when Jesus was talking to the disciples, okay? He's preaching. And they're like, dude, there's 5,000 hungry men here, and they brought their families. What are you going to do about it? He didn't give them just a theological response. He gave them a literal request. Do this with me. I'll tell you what, I'll pray, I will break the bread, you go do the thing. If we engage, we sit in, engage in, feel the realization of the presence, that is with us, we are accepting the invitation to partnership. And what happens? Then his words abide in us and things happen. My heart changes. My wisdom is enhanced. This is not theological, it's real. It's I now have a partnership with the architect of the universe for whatever my problems are. The pressure that lifts off of your shoulders is incredible, because the problems are not yours to solve alone. No matter how big that thing feels that you can't seem to untangle, it's not yours alone if you're working with your partner. I'm realizing, engaging in, sparring with, doing life with the presence that knows more than I do, and he is putting the change, the reality, the wisdom into me for action. This isn't common to discuss. I have experienced it. I know people who have experienced it. It is a reality for the way we can change the way we operate, the way we lead ourselves, and the way we create this culture of our lives. So here's a minute for audience participation. Tony just gave us 6 points. Can someone look back in their notes and tell me what number 7 was? I already know the answer. I just want to make sure you're awake. Shout it out.
Pours out and to get filled back up.
Awesome. Pours out so that God can fill you back up. Doesn't that sound just like this? I give and it will be given to me. I give, I share, I push out, and it will be given back to me by my partner. There is no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of solutions. There's no shortage of resources if I operate in this relationship. That is the culture that I am cultivating with my life. That's how I learn to lead myself. And it affects all the realms that I touch. So, I want to talk about 4 different ways that this manifests. I love these. I could park here all night and talk about the ways that this can manifest. The first one is lifelong learnership. And I have to illustrate this with the diagram that's here in your page. We won't park here very long, but so I mentioned that the company I work for, this consulting firm, our mission is to grow each person to their highest potential. This is a framework that we use to develop people. It is merely illustrative for you tonight, but I want to point out a couple of interesting things that are very applicable to any individual. One would expect that if you're looking at a growth framework for a consulting firm, a for-profit entity, a multi-million-dollar company, you would see a lot more stuff in here about do good sales, go make money, right? It's not here. The belief actually is, if you grow the individual, those mechanical things can be learned. This is hard. Anyone looking at this perspective of lifelong learnership and looking inside this framework, you'll find it. We look from the perspective of, say, 5 hats you wear, or personas. Each one of them, it's more a perspective. Each one of them has an element in which one can be a lifelong learner, no matter what level you're at, no matter where you are in life. So if I'm architecting, if I'm solving problems, I can always be a better problem solver because as my realm of influence changes, my problems become more complex. I'm forever learning. If I'm advising, anybody give advice today? Probably 18 times, right? We give advice all the time, but I can always be better at connecting with people. I can get a little bit better at the messaging. If I'm just generally being a better professional, I can always be a better communicator. I can always have a higher standard of excellence in all spheres. Leading, this one's easy, servant leadership. Let me get out my towel and get on my knees, and how can I serve you better? And how can I serve my bigger, stretching realms of influence more effectively? And then the last one, developing yourself. Lifelong learnership. See, lifelong learners are prepared. They are resilient. They're prepared for change, which is the only constant. The second one, authenticity. I picked a quote here from Ernst & Young. This is from GTWY.com. Authenticity is the most important value for Gen Z, even beyond future plans and being rich. They do a lot of research at Ernst & Young, and this comes from a lot of collective data points. Why did I pick Gen Z? I picked Gen Z because they're the largest population on the planet, because everybody in the room at some point in time interacts with, probably on a regular basis, someone roughly between the age of 15 and 25. I also picked them because kudos to them for being the first group of people to stand up and say, enough's enough. If you're not going to be authentic, I've got no use for you. It's a shame that we got to the point where they had to do that, but that's for another time. There is something to be said for us being willing to be humble enough to learn how to influence this group of people. It's critical that we do it. But their demand for authenticity is a call to action. And if I am learning to lead myself, I want to do this. Otherwise I'm not trusted. I've lost their trust and I've lost their interest, and no matter what goodness I had to say, they've got no time for me, okay? But it is important because we've got one shot to influence. What's the quote? Trust comes in on foot and out on horseback. You've got one shot to do it right. So we have one shot to be real. We don't have to be right. We just have to be real and honest. And the reason it's important is because that group of people I don't know if you've been following even any of the Asbury revival and following kind of outbreak. They're setting the world on fire, these people. They're also going to be next-gen everything. They're going to be the teachers and also the policemen and the firefighters, and also the congressmen, and also the head of the UN, and also the president, and also the CEOs. And they're happy to influence one another. They've mastered social media influencing. So if we don't step up to the plate and get a hold of the culture that we're creating so we can influence our realms in a way that says, I'm willing to partner with the God of the universe and let him fill me up so that I can keep giving out, we're likely to miss a key opportunity. Let's look at the third one, gratitude. Gosh, this is such a good one. Another place we could park all evening. And I went from an angle of education on this one because there's a lot more research around the holistic wellness that comes from choosing a little bit of gratitude. Let's see what Harvard had to say. In positive psychology research, gratitude is strongly and consistently associated with greater happiness. Gratitude helps people feel more positive emotions, relish good experiences, improve their health, deal with adversity, build strong relationships. They had some additional research that even talked about building up your immune system. This is holistic wellness. I mean, it was in the Bible, but it's nice when it's reaffirmed with research. It reaches different people. That's what Harvard had to say. What did Berkeley have to say? Gratitude makes us appreciate the value of something, and when we appreciate the value of something, we extract more benefit from it, thus leading us back to our book here. Satisfaction in your job, your current state, is directly connected to your ability to see the value, to see how you fit into the thing. If you see the value in the thing, you have a bit more appreciation for how you fit in. Gratitude, just choosing gratitude in the small is a way that we set that culture for our life. It's what James Clear was talking about when he said the systems that I'm building that allow me to reach my outcomes. And then the last one, abundance mentality. Oh gosh, this one's my favorite. I mean it. I said that about all of them. This one's actually my favorite. So this is a quote from our CEO and founder of Paraveda. This man's not a believer, by the way. He doesn't share my faith. But he has such incredible wisdom and insight into how to really create healthy environments that create a healthy culture and community and world. He's playing a long game. You have to give gifts all along the way. It's about giving gifts of your time, your ideas, your money, mostly your time and thoughts. Why? Because he values those more. And your empathy. These are the biggest gifts that you can give. We call this abundance mentality, and this is hearkening back to the verse in John 17, where I engage with presence, and I take on the wisdom of God, and out of me come his ideas. He's not lacking ideas. He's not lacking anything. He's not lacking solutions. He's not lacking resources. This is abundance mentality, as opposed to poverty mentality. We're very familiar with what poverty mentality feels like. We've often been, I certainly have been guilty of it. You maybe have too, but we've certainly been on the receiving end of it. It's where I hold on to everything. What are the C's that you said, Tony? It was copy, compare, compete. It feels like this. In order for me to succeed, there's only one way. I've got to hold on to my money, hold on to my resources, can't share my ideas because then I won't have any more. There's only one ladder with rungs to the top and one roll at the top, and I'm going to get it. It's this limiting. It limits every single interaction, because if I actually believe that, then I'm not sharing abundantly what has freely been given to me because I'm afraid. I'm actually afraid I will never have another good idea. It's also a lot of pressure. And the pressure comes because my source is me. If my source is the architect of the universe, who spoke everything out of nothing, he can do that again. So my source alignment has to be this key partnership, my business partnership, that creates abundance mentality, abundance thinking. This is the system that I am cultivating in my life when I lead myself. I realize what I'm saying is strange. It is post-conventional, it's illogical, it is countercultural, it is scary. It's also the truth. And it takes a lot of courage to try it. But if God says he'll give us the answers and he'll give us the strategies and the outcomes, he'll do it. We're just going to have to step out and try. So, we're not going to do a table talk this time, actually. We're going to give you a stretch break, drink break, bathroom break. Please think about these things as you go. 3 things unique to you. Talk about them with your friends while you go get some water. What are 3 things unique to you that are your leadership strengths? Okay, we'll see you in a couple minutes.
All right, here we go. We are going to keep going because time is flying. I also thought it was very funny, Tiffany. Thank you for giving us a little bit of a trick question earlier when you said that Tony gave you 6 applicational points. What's number 7? Is what you said. And I was like, that's a great trick question because you got me off guard even with that as well. So good. As we continue on, we are talking practically now. We've entered into hopefully what's practical around how to lead when you're not in charge. Tiffany said the first thing that we have to do is we have to be willing to lead yourself. You have to be willing to lead yourself. If you are not willing to lead yourself into deeper levels of healthiness, deeper levels of all the things that which she said, how do you expect to lead organizations and teams and your family and fill in the blank? So lead yourself. So that leads us to our second point. Our second point is that we are going to think critically. We are going to choose how to lead when I'm not in charge. If I don't have a title, how am I choosing to lead? I'm going to think critically. Let's talk about some of these ideas of what that means. A moment ago, I mentioned that I'm a little bit of an optimist. Well, who are optimists in the room? Anyone? Show of hands. Who are optimists? Great, fantastic. Okay, so sometimes optimists could be perceived as puking rainbow unicorns. Everything is happy all the time, even when I'm puking, it's great. I'm good. My goodness, I'm guilty of this. Where it's like I can sometimes be in my unhealthiness of optimism. I can be in unrealism. So this puking rainbow unicorn can be a thing. But there also is the pessimist in the room. Any pessimists? And so it's okay if you're a pessimist. Yeah, awesome, great. Pessimists can have this Eeyore thing of, hey, it could be worse. Not sure how it could be worse, but it could be worse. And this idea of thinking in the negative framework. Well, here's the thing. When we're talking about thinking critically, we're breaking away from optimism and we're breaking away from pessimism. We are thinking realistically. We are breaking away from optimism. We are breaking away from pessimism. As we think critically, what are we doing? We are thinking realistically. Clay says this, is that everything is not always awesome. Cue the soundtrack. Great leaders know that. They also know how to listen, to watch, are sharp, they connect the dots, they know how to motivate people and fix problems because they're able to think critically. Critical thinking is where we are going, is a trait, is a skill, is a mark of someone who is able to lead when they are not in charge. So what does that look like? 3 things. Number 1 is stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. This is a mindset shift. These 3 things are mindset shifts that we are processing together here. We want to stop thinking like an employee. We want to start thinking like an owner. What in the world does that mean? Well, 3 things within this. Number 1 is that owners typically see things that others don't. They just have the eye. They have the ability to pick out details that maybe others aren't able to see at times. They're able to see from sometimes a visionary standpoint, from a top down, or they can see really low to the ground to the minutia of detail. But owners, many a times, if they're a good owner, they're able to see what many times others aren't able to see. So that is what we want to do. Number two is that we need to know that owners typically have more buy-in than others. This is where a title actually is helpful. Many times is that titles can have buy-in, but just generally speaking, the person who is the owner of a coffee shop, the owner of an organization, of a company, they typically, hopefully, have buy-in if they're a healthy leader. We want to think in this way. Number three is owners care more deeply because their future depends on it. Their income depends on it. Their reputation depends on it. They have this every day of like, I'm depending upon all of these other employees that are not beneath me, but are under me, and they're running this company. And if they don't do well, then I don't do well. They are acting like their future depends on it. And so here's what I want to invite us all into: is what would it look like to have more owner mentality? Not in the prideful sense, but just in this ownership sense. You're owning the mission. You're owning the objective. You're looking for the details. You are living intentionally like an owner would. Number two is that we need to stop stacking meetings and start scheduling thinking meetings. This one's fun, and sometimes seemingly unrealistic at times. Because how many of you feel like when you look at your calendar that you just have meeting after 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 meeting? And meetings that just don't stop, and you have a meeting to plan for the meeting that is about to come up. And you just feel like I am spinning my gears on having meetings. And it's easy to get bogged down in details and troubleshooting and being just a critical thinker in a negative sense and putting out fires. It is what happens many times in meetings. Clay would say that this idea of rather than stacking all these meetings, what if we provided some bandwidth, some margin, some space to have thinking meetings? One of the thoughts revolves around this idea that do I run my calendar or does my calendar run me? Am I run and dictated by meetings? Or am I having some authority in how that's going down? Now, if you are the one that is submitting to the leadership above you, sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to go to that meeting, otherwise you're fired. But what does it look like then? Okay, if I'm gonna try to manage my schedule, my calendar with some healthiness. Clay says this: more times than not, meetings are reacting to circumstances, solving problems, putting out fires. They are usually not the place for new ideas, imagination, and innovation. Now, you might be saying, Tony, I feel like I have meetings all the time that have ideas, imagination, innovation. Awesome. You might be of the minority. But so often we get caught up in meeting after meeting after meeting. And so, what if we took a step further and said that critical thinking requires uninterrupted mental space? If you're always going from meeting to meeting, you will not have that space, and you need to carve it out or your leadership will suffer. Opportunity to dream. Opportunity to be creative. Opportunity just to vision cast. Within your ownership, within your leadership, within your tasks, not just always putting out fires. If we are always just living in the context of our leadership, but we're not working on the context of our leadership, it might suffer. Do you catch that? If you're always working in the context of your leadership, you might not be, and you don't have time to think on the context of your leadership, it might suffer. So what would it look like to start scheduling literal brackets of time in your schedule to just think, or to just dream, or to just vision cast, or to just take a break, for crying out loud? We are so driven by productivity. We're so driven by, I need to produce. But we need space. Our brains are finite. Our bodies are finite. In order to think critically, your brain needs to be functioning well. And I would submit for our consideration that going nonstop meetings isn't gonna fix it. Number 3, stop being critical, start thinking critically. Stop being critical, start thinking critically. Clay says this: what is the key difference between someone who is critical and someone who is a critical thinker? One word: motive. One word: motive. Do you have someone, don't say it out loud, do you have someone in your life that is just a critical thinker? Like, they are quick on the draw for the negative. They are quick on the draw for popping the balloon. They're quick on the draw for why that's not going to work. It kind of sucks, doesn't it? As leaders, do we need to be realistic? Yes, I've already said that. But we need to practice discipline on how we use our words, when we use our words, and how safe is that space to say your full-fledged opinion. There's a principle that someone shared, I don't remember who or where or when, but this idea of wow before how. That you're going to wow something before you how it. Because so often we're quick to say, that's not going to work because of this, and this. Or there's no way, how could you not have thought of this? Well, what if we said, wow, I could see how that could be a great idea. Or I could see how that has this crazy cool impact possible. Like, wow before how. Does that work all the time? Should it happen all the time? No. If it's a truly dumb idea, we need to be willing to say it. But wowing before howing, maybe that's maybe there's a principle in there to steal. Let's talk about being critical versus thinking critically. Let's just parse those out, and then we're going to move on. Being critical, typically, if you have a critical mindset, you want others to lose. And that's not fun to say. But deep down, can you be honest? Like, if you've ever had this deep critical spirit of something or someone, it's not because you wanted it to win. It's because you maybe wanted it to lose. How about number 2? You tear down. Rather words of wow, you use lots of howls all over the place. And not careful with how you use your words. Are there words that are used to constructively give criticism? Yes. That are needed? Yes. Are we here to coddle? No. But you're not here to tear down. Number 3, they typically bring more problems. They don't usually come to the table offering solutions. They usually come bringing, here's all the things that are wrong. Is that you? Can that be your tendency? Number 4, they want the credit. They really love credit. They even want extra credit. The things that not even their ideas. Okay? They somehow wanted to make it their idea. But they want the credit. Well, what about the other side? Thinking critically. It literally is just a paralleled opposite. They want others to win. They're not thinking, oh, I want my idea to win. I want the best idea to win. They're not thinking, what's the win for me? No, what's the win for our team? Number 2, they build up. They simply, people, come on, you know that there's people, I heard this from someone else, and I'm stealing it, but like there's like two types of people in the world. Those who make you feel good when they walk in the room, and those who make you feel good when they leave the room. Which one are you? Are you one who builds someone's up? When you walk in the room, are people happy? Do you build people up? Title or not? Are you a builder? Number 3, you bring solutions. A mentor of mine in college said this to me. He said, every problem has a solution. If it doesn't have a solution, it's a fact of life. Every problem has a solution. If it doesn't have a solution, it's a fact of life. Are we willing to bring solutions? It's so easy. I'm the culprit. It's so easy to complain. It takes much more maturity to bring solutions. Number 4, wants the best idea to win. Wants the best idea to win. So take a couple of minutes around your table, around this idea of thinking critically. And just a generic question, but maybe kind of look through your notes. What's just something that makes you think? What's something that challenges you the most from this particular section? Go. Got about 20 seconds, 20 seconds. All right, we're bringing it back in.
We're gonna land this plane. We've got 2 more topics, and we aim to end on time tonight. Y'all ready? Next topic, courageous followership. Let's talk about being a courageous follower, because we can't be a good leader unless we're capable of also following. Courageous followership is ever present. All right, it's true, it's just a fact. We will forever always be following. This quote actually comes from the foreword in the book by Pastor Andy Stanley. Eventually, every leader is forced to come to terms with the reality that somebody is accountable, everybody is accountable to somebody. Like most life lessons, the sooner a leader embraces this, the better. It's like, I remember being the 5-year-old that was like, well, when I'm the boss, when I am an adult, you will not be able to tell me what to do. And sadly, that was never, ever the case, ever. I can't come up with a single scenario in which there is not a boss for somebody. And I tried. I have been trying. If we are able to realize that we will forever be followers in different ways, we actually can be very engaged, very intentional, very courageous about it. So I introduced you a little bit to this framework already. I want to share you can see the slides in your deck, but my company does take this quite seriously. So again, illustrative, we had these 5 personas. One of them is leader. Underneath servant leader, which we talked about already, there's something called courageous followership. And all I'm trying to point out on this slide is that this is not for the junior person. It's not for the young person, the new person, the inexperienced person, whatever. At our firm, it's for everyone. There is an expectation of courageous followership for every single person, including the CEO, a very specific one that everyone is measured on. It's that important to your individual development, to reaching your potential, to reaching your calling. This quote at the top is tough. It says, the ideal courageous follower assumes full responsibility for their own and their leader's behavior and acts accordingly. Well, that's tough. I've had the privilege a couple of times of building my own team from scratch, and we have a rule of engagement of you make one another look good. That's what this is. If everybody doesn't succeed, you don't succeed as an individual. The idea of courageous followership is I get to take the responsibility for someone else's success, and that's going to be heavy lifting. There's several different dimensions here. I just want to draw your attention to the ones on the left for just some seeds to leave behind. This isn't just for a corporate environment. In fact, nothing about these says corporation. These are just human behaviors. I assume responsibility. I serve. I challenge. I participate in change, in transformation, and I take moral action. Everybody can own that in whatever scenario in which you need to courageously follow. Is that at home with your husband or wife? Is it at school? Is it at church? Is it in your job, your new job, your old job? Whatever your realm of influence is, I can practice all 5 of these dimensions in one way or another. Should I stay or should I go? Ugh, this is another one. The truth is, I don't know. People ask me this all the time. Should I leave my job? I don't know. This is not actually about staying or going, or there being a right or wrong answer, or you're unhappy, or you're miserable, you're not fulfilled, blah, 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 blah. This is about building a healthy framework for making that decision. Being a courageous follower means that I am willing to take a minute and seek counsel and not make emotional rash decisions and pray about things. Remember, I've already made an agreement that I've got a business partner I need to consult. So should I stay or should I go? My job is miserable. I hate it here. That happens to everybody. If it hasn't happened to you yet, at some point it will happen to you. Here's some good advice. Never take counsel of your fears. Thank you, Stonewall Jackson. And Eamon Markland is a pastor and author. She said, hear all advice, listen to good advice, heed wise counsel. Build a framework for yourself for making decisions. What does AA say? HALT. Don't make decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Is that the 4? Someone maybe, we need Todd in here to tell us what if I'm right. The point is, don't make rash emotional decisions. Don't act out of anger, frustration, fear. Think, pause, reflect, pray, seek good counsel. There is never a right or wrong to this. It's about finding the mental framework in which you can make these decisions in a healthy fashion. A third part of courageous followership, and Tony hit on some of these. CPR is just easy to remember. Choosing, planning, responding. That basically means that I'm active. I'm an active participation. I'm in active participation the whole time I'm present. I choose something. I observe something that needs fixed. I make a plan. I don't just show up with a problem, right? I show up with a potential solution. And then I respond to what's important to my fill in the blank. Who are you talking to? My boss, my spouse, my teacher, my colleague, fill in the blank. It's active participation. And then finally, this is just a great reminder. God is always working on something you can't see. Always, always. We probably could go around the room and share umpteen examples of when this has happened to us, and we're like, oh, again, yes, I should have known that. And then the next time, we almost make the same mistake. He is always looking at things that we can simply not see all of the context. Give yourself time and space for pieces to fall into place that don't seem to fit, and for less than ideal circumstances to fall into place. That doesn't mean leaving is wrong. It doesn't mean staying is right or wrong. It means that you've thought it through and you've prayed it out and you've considered how to be an engaged and interactive, courageous follower. And now I'm going to invite my friend Tony to the stage.
So we're heading into the home stretch here, the final one, challenging up. And this one is, my goodness, potentially one of the most difficult ones of our whole conversation, because this is the space as a leader that we are saying, okay, I'm going to challenge the leader above me. I'm going to potentially give some critique to the leader above me, and I don't know how it's gonna go. Do I do it? Do I not? Do I shut up? What do I do when I feel like there's some critique, some feedback, some helpful information I could give to my boss, to my higher up, etc.? What does challenging up look like? Leaders make a way when others can't find a way. Leaders look at what is, see what could be, and organize others to move forward toward the preferred futures. Leaders will challenge the status quo. They are not okay with this is the way we've always done it, and they refuse to accept mediocrity. Another way to put it is leaders can stir the pot. Can that be a bad thing? Yes. But can it be a really good thing? Yeah. And how are we choosing to do that? Number one, challenging up. We need to know this, is that challenge brings change, and change is inherently challenging. Challenge brings change, and change is inherently challenging. Many of us in this room don't like change. We like it the way it is. Why mess with the flow? Don't rock the boat. But I'm also wondering, because I'm talking to a bunch of leaders in the room, am I looking at a room of people who actually do like rocking the boat in a good way? That you are willing to challenge the status quo, that you're willing to say, hey, look, let me throw the flag of, is it okay to say that, oh, that's just the way we've always done it, and is that the right answer? Challenge brings change, and change is inherently challenging. We need to just cognitively understand that and put some patience upon our mind, be careful with how we word things and how we talk about things, because as we are trying to usher in change, people get sensitive. And that's not bad. It just is a reality. So we need to be aware of that. Number two is the more personally your boss relates to their job, the more personally your boss will take your challenge. If your boss has built the organization from the ground up and you go in to give some critique, it's gonna hit differently than the boss who just walked into an organization brand spanking new. We need to know that the person that you're working with, the person that is your boss, the person that's your direct report, if you're going to give some type of feedback, some type of critique, that you need to know, hey, what's the story behind their tenure? What's the story behind, do they have good relations with the other senior levels of leadership? Do they have, what's the relationship with you? Do you have a rapport with them to be able to speak in to their life? Because if you don't, I would think twice. Because we are quick to sometimes pull the trigger on giving critique. But do we have the relationship with our boss to even be able to do that? Number three, any change to the present will be perceived as a criticism of past leadership. Friends, we need to, this isn't an absolute statement, but it's true many of the time. When change comes in, it is very easy to say, oh, well, that's because that leader didn't do it well. It might be the case, but how are we still painting the narrative forward? And how are we choosing to speak well of people even if they were in the wrong? And I'm not saying we need to sugarcoat. Do we need to speak truthfully? Yes. Do we need to call sin, sin? Yes. Do we need to call out weakness? Yes, we need to, but we need to be careful of how we say it. The criticism, how you say it is just as important as what you say. And this part maybe is biggest thing of it all is that great leaders don't get defensive. Great leaders don't get defensive. Anyone get defensive? Like anyone, like you can get, being honest, you can get defensive at times. Yeah, it's easy to get defensive over the thing that you built from the ground up. It's kind of easy to get defensive of the trait that you think is a really good leadership trait of what you have, or when you think you're right. Great leaders, friends, do not get defensive. They stay calm. They receive criticism. They're humble about it. But they're willing to work through it. Where's your defensive meter? How easily offended and defensive do you get? That could be a mark of how much people want to come to you with feedback. What's a seminar or something that has Tony marked in it without talking about Chick-fil-A? We love our Chick-fil-A. There's a gentleman. I forget his name actually. I wrote it down because I was going to forget it. So go brain for writing something down. I know, I talked to my brain. That's weird, I know. Shane Todd. There is a Chick-fil-A owner by the name of Shane Todd, and he is an operator, Chick-fil-A operator down in Athens, Georgia. And years ago, has anyone had a Chick-fil-A milkshake before? Anyone have a Chick-fil-A milkshake? Great. So Chick-fil-A milkshakes, by the peppermint milkshake, the best of all time. I wish that peppermint milkshake was around year round. But the Shane Todd was the one who was the innovator, the creative on the Chick-fil-A milkshake. When it didn't exist at Chick-fil-A, he came with the idea of, man, I want to bring a milkshake to Chick-fil-A. And the other owners, the other operators, the other leadership were like, no, like that's not. I don't think it's going to work. It's not going to sell. We do chicken. That's what we do well. Let's not go that route. And he kept on pushing, and he was challenging up past layers of conversation, and finally to the point where he actually got a Chick-fil-A milkshake to come into the restaurants. And what Clay actually got the chance to talk with Todd, and from some of his conversations, he learned some of these principles that Todd has from their Chick-fil-A, and some of these principles around challenging up. Let's take a look at a couple of these. Is great leaders challenge up with the best motives. Great leaders challenge up with the best motives. So I would ask you this: Are you challenging up with good motives, or are you doing it to get a leg up on someone else? Are you doing it so that you can look good in front of your boss? Are you doing it so that you get recognized in that email? Why are you challenging up? What are your motives? Number two is that Todd said, great leaders are keenly aware of what the boss is most interested in. Are you aware of what interests your boss? I don't want to put the boss on a higher pedestal per se, but at the same time, we need to be careful with our higher ups that we don't just bring trivial information that's going to waste their time. And again, be gracious with me with how I just said that, but we have to take interest in what interests the boss as well, and we have to know the heartbeat of what interests them, what they're passionate about, and bringing topics of conversation, agendas, and other things. And how are we choosing to do that within our dialoguing? Number three is great leaders know what's core and what is peripheral, keeping the main thing the main thing. As you challenge up, are you worried about this like outskirts fringe stuff, or are you really trying to like get the core of what's going on? Being selective with what you're challenging on. Number four is great leaders challenge up quietly, but they are not silent. They don't make a lot of noise left and right. They're sure as heck not silent. We could stick longer on challenging up, and we are, but Tiffany's going to kind of bring us home here with some contents around a little bit of a diagram. So go ahead.
So this diagram, excuse me, is called, can you click us through once? Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. So many of you are familiar with DISC, right? you've seen that test before. Okay, this is very similar. This is called whole brain, or HBDI. It stands for Herman Brain Dominance Instrument. These tools are so great. They're so much fun. There's some art and there's some science, and you can use them for lots of cool things. What I like about this one and how it relates to the topic that Tony was just sharing is there are ways to use this content to try to understand how someone else absorbs information, how they hear, how they process. If we want to be effective and respectful challengers up, we have to take the time and have the respect to put ourselves in the shoes of that person and think through how they might effectively absorb information. All this diagram does is show that there are different ways people process information, but here's what we want to illustrate for you. So Tony's good enough to do a little skit with me. We're going to wrap up with some audience participation here, please. We want to illustrate how active and thoughtful listening and just basic conversation can teach you something about the way another person processes information. You don't have to have them take a test and read their results. You actually can just have a conversation and learn a few things. So we're going to do 2 skits, very quick, of the same thing, and we would like you to identify at the end of each one, what did you learn about Tony and the way he processes information? Mary Beth, please do not cheat. Tony's playing a role, so he's just going to be all different kinds of personas up here. Okay, we're going to start with Sunday morning. We run into each other in the lobby. We're just having a casual, hey, how you doing conversation. Okay, scene 1. Tony, oh my gosh, so great to see you. I saw your Insta post. You and Mary Beth just got back from vacation, right?
Yes, we did, yeah.
Cool, where were you?
We were in Punta Cana.
Nice. I've not been there. How was it?
It was great, very relaxing.
Cool, and how long were you there?
We were gone 10 days, and it was very relaxing.
Great, what'd you do?
What did we do? We windsurfed, we did some tours, we laid by the pool, we hung out. It was excellent.
That's awesome. That sounds like the perfect pre-baby trip. Oh gosh, it's late. We need to get in. Worship is starting. I'll see you later.
Great, see you.
And scene. Okay, hang on for a second. Take a look at the diagram and think about what you heard about Tony. And we're going to do this one more time. Okay, Act 2. Tony, great to see you. I saw in your Insta post you and Mary Beth were just on vacation, right?
Yes, we were.
Cool, where were you?
We were in Punta Cana for 10 days. It was amazing. The weather was perfect. This was actually our baby moon.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. How was it?
It was great. Very relaxing. Mary Beth felt so rested the whole time. It was just nice to get away and be together for a while. It was a beautiful trip.
Awesome. And how long were you there?
We were there for 10 days.
Oh, right. I'm sorry you said that. That sounds absolutely perfect. Well, listen, I'll talk to you after church. Worship is starting.
Great.
And scene. Okay, the first Tony. What did you learn about him? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Anything else?
He likes to relax.
He does, in fact, like to relax. I think both Tonys like to relax. That's cool. True. So we had a simple conversation, and you learned some very interesting things about him. What about the second Tony?
I would say more relational.
Mm-hmm. What else? Anything else?
Didn't wait for you to ask. He offered.
Right. He was a bit more holistic in the way he was describing vacation. I didn't even have to tell him, I didn't even have to ask him how long he was gone. I don't think in the second one I asked him how Mary Beth enjoyed the trip, and he just offered that. He offered that it was a baby moon. Does this make sense to you in that very simple illustration? If I had a conversation, a water cooler conversation with Tony, and then I wanted to approach him about something that maybe I want to challenge up or make a suggestion, and I'm coming with the right motives and using all the other techniques that he suggested to us, the first guy, I'm going to be looking for things that are, well, maybe a little more analytical, maybe a little more detailed, some organization. I have taken this test a dozen times. For those of you who don't know me, well, you know me a little bit tonight. I am very red-yellow in every way. But it is my responsibility, out of respect for the person I am challenging up to be able to communicate in a way that they can absorb. That actually is my responsibility. It's how I serve them well. So I need to think about the way Tony hears. And then the second Tony would be a little more storytelling. Maybe I could share a narrative of what the improvement might feel like. Right? This is not rocket science. There are ways to just listen carefully to what people say, how they say them, to see how they might more easily or not receive your information. There's lots of ways to do this. You can look at, if you're professional, you can look at a LinkedIn profile. If you see a lot of facts, you're looking probably at someone who's a bit more blue-green, a little more analytical. You can look at someone's office when you're in there. Lots of pictures of puppies, kittens, children, they're a little more red-yellow. Lots of degrees and very organized color-coded books, they're probably blue-green, right? Just be an active listener, a thoughtful, observant listener, and it'll help you go a long way with strategizing on how to challenge up.
And speaking of active listening, if you weren't able to be with us at the last seminar, that's precisely what we covered, was what does it look like to be a better active listener? On our YouTube page, we have all of these seminars archived and put there so you can go back and check them out. We've been live streaming this whole one here so that you can go and if this was drinking through a fire hose, which it kind of was, then you can go back and kind of see some of those notes. So the active listening portion of how am I viewing my teammates, my colleagues, my boss, my spouse, my kids, my next door neighbor. There is so much that we can learn and glean if we just listen to people. And how we are choosing to do that. I'm going to send an email tonight or tomorrow morning for you that's going to have some additional information on, this isn't DISC, this is the Herman Brain Dominance Instrument, but it's very similar to DISC. And I'll send you just a couple of links or a couple of things that you can check out DISC if that's kind of strikes your interest on how to understand maybe some of your own physical, some of your own strengths as a leader and how you think in this way, to also how can you help understand people. These are not tools that we use as any type of divine inspiration by any means. They are just human instruments that we try to help guide us in our leadership and understanding of people. So, we have wrapped up. We have covered a ton of ground. My question for you is, as we end our time, is what is your key takeaway? What is your key takeaway? Take 1 minute to yourself and just think for a second. What is your one key takeaway from tonight? Go.
Thank you.
No, stay up here. All right. I know it's unfair to ask you what's your one key takeaway from 2 hours worth of fire hosing content. At the same time, here's my hope. Here's our hope, Tiffany and I's, as we conclude, is that this is meant to be a springboard into deeper levels of thinking and conversation with yourself, with your spouse, with your teammates, with your boss, with your coach, with your mentor, with your pastor, whatever it may be, is that the hope is that the 2 hours worth of fire hose content is you just go and let this be a springboard into your leadership. You're not going to conquer how to lead when you're not in charge tomorrow. But what's one step? What's one thing? The ever-evolving, learning leader is the one who is willing to take the next step, and the next step, and the next step. So what's that next step for you? Thank you guys for being with us. And can we thank Tiffany for being a part as our special guest tonight? I told this to our staff earlier this morning, staff meeting, that I just feel smarter when I stand next to you. So thank you for being present tonight. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for what you provide and the value that you've added to tonight. It's been invaluable. So just thank you so much. There is, let's see if it's going to, I don't know if it's going to click for me or not. Probably isn't because, oh, wait. My bad. Go back. Boom. Okay, so what's next? We have our next leadership development seminar already planned, already scheduled, already ready to roll. Not really, but almost. May 30th, 7 to 9. We're going to talk about the 5 marks of a healthy leader. And Pastor Scott Feather and I, we're going to be kind of tackling this conversation. Gateway Church, we've been wrestling through for the past 6 months. What are marks of a leader? And how do we, what's the, basically like the irreducible minimum of what it means to be an effective and competent leader, but not just an effective and competent leader, but a healthy leader. Because you can be competent and be unhealthy. So what does it look like to be a effective, competent, and healthy leader? Scott and I would love to share with you our findings from the past 6 months of researching that together. So there's already a registration open for you to be able to sign up. If you want to be the first person that signs up, you just get a attaboy, and that's it. But it's open, and we would love to see you guys there. I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again to end, I'm so thankful that you would take 2 hours and 6 minutes out of your Tuesday to come and learn. To come and learn what it means to be a humble leader. How to lead when I'm not in charge. What does it mean to lead out my influence? All the things we talked about. It is not lost on us that there are a dozen other things you could be doing. But you chose to come here. So thank you. Allow me to pray as we end our time. Father, we ask that you would take everything that we have learned, thought, processed, dialogued, and we submit it to your feet and say, have your will and have your way through it all. If anything has not been of you, God, tonight, would it just be wiped away from our minds? And if anything that has been of you tonight may be so seared into our mind that we cannot forget it. And that we choose to be leaders that are authentic, identity fixated on you, Jesus. Ones who are willing to think critically, courageously follow, lead ourselves, follow you. But we need help. So help. And thank you in advance for that help. We love you, Father. Thank you so much for loving us first. And all God's leaders said, Amen.